Which exhibit is that specifically?
That's the next thing I was going to address. That's states 10M, which is the map.
Okay.
And the difficulty, Your Honor, is that they seek not only to introduce the actual maps that he's plotted, they also seek to introduce his whole report, which contains explanations of what some of the terminology means. I think it gives extra credence in exhibit form. It's essentially bolstering your expert's opinion. They can certainly testify to it, the jury can absorb it. If they want to see it, once they're deliberating, it should be presented again, just like prior testimony.
All right, thank you. And as for Defendant Robinson?
Your Honor, we add in that objection, have a few more. With respect to that objection, it allows the state to have an advocate, so to speak, in the jury room. For that reason, it should be a demonstrative. The other objections that we have is contained within the materials, and the state can correct me if I'm wrong, there's some text messages. Those text messages are from the year prior, that there's volleys back and forth. Tell me if this is not this witness. Okay, so I'll table that objection. Then the only other one is, my understanding is for any of the iCloud data, they're entering it for the record, but not into evidence to go back with the jury with everything that's in the iClouds.
For the exhibit that I'm seeking to introduce now, which is the iCloud records, that's just the subscriber sheets, the information. There are additional records that come from the iClouds that we're seeking to introduce through a different witness, and it would not be the entirety, it would be selected items that we're showing.
Okay, so it's not, that's not this witness. All right.
This is Special Agent Corley, he would only testify to the phone records and the map that the court has now.
Okay. All right, so do you want to table that until the next witness, or the appropriate witness, Mr. DeCoste?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
The non-prem in advance objection that we do have is to renew one, which is the color coding of our client. If Your Honor remembers from the demonstrative that was used in opening statement that our client was in red, we objected to that. Red is universally known as a color of danger. Here, the phone number where the shooter is in red, and I think that there may also be a there are numbers in here, there are two different numbers that are in red. Even subconsciously, this says to the jury, connect this with the red that you have for Mr. Robinson. So we have the 478 number, which is an unknown number that they believe that the shooter has in their possession. And then a phone call that's incoming to one. You'll see a 478 number in red on the right-hand side.
Yes.
I'm sorry, 16.
Okay, yes.
All right. So that number is the phone that they believe the shooter had. Now, they've already coded Mr. Robinson to the color red. Then if you go to page 18, on the left-hand side, there's an 800 number. That's an incoming phone call on Mr. Robinson's known phone, unrelated to the 478 number. So this, I don't think, helps a jury. I think it's confusing. We're just asking for colors that don't confuse them into thinking, oh, this is all Hakeem Robinson.
Okay. Any response?
Just that the maps are an exhibit. They're routinely introduced into juries. The slides that predate or that are before the map are necessary to explain to the jury what cell phone records are and how to look at the maps, how to interpret what they see on the maps. And the color coding is based upon the state's belief and evidence that we are going to present through other witnesses that will come in that will tie the difference.
Your Honor, what I'm hearing is that they haven't laid the foundation to link the 478 number to Mr. Robinson, so we'd add that objection. And then we don't object to the maps, we don't object to the data, we object to the color coding. These expert witnesses are supposed to help a jury understand it. This confuses it.
Well, there's multiple telephone numbers and there's multiple colors here. There's orange, there's purple, there's like a greenish gray, there's a couple reds. Honestly, there's more orange and teal than there are reds. So if the color coding is the objection, I'm going to overrule it.
And the lack of foundation.
Okay, well, certainly predicate will need to be laid. Well, we have the business certification.
Yes, ma'am, and this witness is not going to testify to who any of those numbers belong to. He's
Okay.
just going to say that he received the information for the numbers and that he mapped the corresponding data.
All right, so as to both Mr. Whitaker and to Mr. Robinson, I'll overrule the objection as to 10M. I think that was it. As to the other exhibits, though, that were mentioned, there was no objection from Mr. Whitaker. Any objection from Mr. Robinson?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Which other ones?
The other ones the state outlined, I think they are 9W, X, Y, Z, 10A, B, C, D, and E.
No new objection. The same objections should apply here to the data that would be relevant or hearsay.
Okay.
I think we skipped one. Yes, it's 250. Yeah.
All right, then if nothing else, are we ready to bring the jurors in?
Yes, ma'am, I can do it now or I can do it with the detective. I haven't moved 10
Oh.
I will do that now. Or I can do it with the detective.
Why don't you do it with the detective? Okay, here it is, so we'll return it. All right, then if all sides are ready, why don't we get the jurors in and seated so we may begin? To continue with our duty at hand. Before we begin, I, of course, am going to ask all of you whether or not during this weekend recess, any of you inadvertently perhaps may have seen, read, watched, or listened to any news stories that may have been printed or aired about this case. If so, please raise your hand. All right, and I see no hands raised. Did anyone during this weekend recess, or even as you arrived here this morning or left on Friday afternoon, approach you or attempt to speak to you or say anything to you about this case? If so, please raise your hand. All right, and for the record, I see no hands raised. Has anyone, friends, family, or otherwise, tried to share information with you about anything to do with this case, the issues in this case, or the people and places involved in this case? If so, please raise your hand. Bless you, ma'am. All right, and I see no hands raised. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, then we are going to continue with the state's case in chief, and at this time I'll call upon the state to call its next witness. Agent Corley, please. All right, sir, if you'll come forward and be sworn. All right, if you'll have a seat there on the witness stand, and be sure to speak closely, loudly, and clearly into the microphones. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Special Agent Rob Corley. I work with the FBI in Jacksonville Division, and I'm assigned to the office in Daytona Beach.
How long have you worked with the FBI?
Since 2011.
And what is your current position?
Current position is I am assigned to the Counterintelligence Squad.
Okay. In addition to being counterintelligence, are you also a CAST agent?
I am.
And can you explain to the jury what is CAST?
So CAST is a group of about 80 to 90 agents and task force officers across the United States who receive advanced training and cellular analysis and location information. We have three primary functions. We respond to situations that involve locating individuals in real time, so tracking fugitives, looking for missing children, victims who have been kidnapped. So we use this information we're going to talk about today in real time to locate people. I've located fugitives, I've located missing children, and I've located the bodies of victims using this information. We also provide training to state and local and other federal partners in this same area, and we do what I'm doing here today, which is testify as a witness to help explain the subject matter.
Can you explain to the jury your educational background?
I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a master's degree in criminal justice.
And you also have a background in the military?
I do have a background in the military. I was a captain in the U.S. Air Force.
And did your background in the military use this type of technology?
Yes, I was a logistician, so we used similar technology to track cargo equipment moving in and out of Afghanistan. I also worked on some projects where we used RFID to find in large warehouses.
Do you have any specialized training in your field specifically related to historical mobile device location analysis?
I do, yes, sir.
Can you explain that to the jury?
So I am CAST certified. The certification process for CAST requires us to go through several iterations of training. At this point, I've received about 400 hours of training in cellular analysis. It starts with a basic course where we learn the basics of records I'm going to explain today. We go through an advanced course which gets into other types of records, location records, timing advance, and then we move on to an environment where we use the information in a command post situation to see if we can come up with the same solutions that other CAST agents have come up with in real world scenarios. If you progress through those, you're selected for CAST certification. CAST certification is 160 hours of training. It starts with introduction to radio frequency theory, which is taught by PhD professors from the Florida Institute of Technology. We receive 40 hours of training in that, and then we receive about 40 hours of training from each of the cell phone providers. So they bring in the people that actually maintain and pull these records that we're going to talk about today, and they bring in their engineers that set up their networks to tell us how and why they set up their networks that way. And then there's some additional training on software mapping, court testimony, a thing we call a drive test where we use equipment to measure the footprint of cell towers. And then once you complete all that, you're certified. We also are required to attend an annual recertification where they bring in those same providers to provide any updates to their records, allow us to ask questions to the engineers. They talk about new and emerging technologies such as 5G would be a big one right now that's going on. And we also get training from other companies like Apple, Google, Facebook, Meta. We recently had training from Starlink, which is now, your phone's connecting to satellites. So they bring in all kinds of people to give us information on emerging topics in location analysis.
Approximately how many times in the past have you had the opportunity to analyze historical call detail records with location information?
More than 100 cases,
And approximately how many times have you testified in court related to this work?
21 times.
Where all have you testified?
I've testified in this district in Jacksonville and Clay County. I've testified in Volusia County. I've testified in federal court in Fort Myers and Tampa, also Pensacola. I've testified in Knoxville, Tennessee, and Savannah, Georgia.
And have you been accepted as an expert interpreting this type of data?
Yes,
Is your analysis peer reviewed?
it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would tender Special Agent Corley for voir dire.
Okay, any additional questioning from Defendant Whitaker?
No, Your Honor.
And from Defendant Robinson?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed.
In this case, did you create a report with visuals to help the jury understand your analysis?
I did.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Agent Corley, I'm showing you what's been marked with states 10M. Can you take a moment to view that? Do you recognize the contents of that binder?
Yes, it's my report.
Your Honor, at this time, the state remove what's been marked as 10M, states 246.
All right. On behalf of Defendant Whitaker,
Just subject to the prior objection made.
understood. On behalf of Mr. Robinson,
Same, Your Honor, subject to previous motions and objections.
all right. And subject to those motions and objections, states 10M will be marked into evidence as states number 246.
May I publish?
Yes.
Agent Corley, do you see the screen in front of you?
I do, yes, sir.
Is this the same report that's contained within that binder?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so we can see here on this first page all of the numbers that you analyzed.
That's correct.
Starting on page 3, can you explain to the jury how a cell phone generally works in conjunction with cell phone towers?
Sure. So our cell towers are connected to each other to communicate back and forth. They're also connected to traditional landlines. So they move information and data from those towers to either over the internet, other landlines, or directly to towers. In order for your cell phone to communicate with a tower, it uses radio frequency. Your cell phone, when on, is constantly scanning its environment to try to figure out what tower it wants to connect to. So it's going to decide, the cell phone itself will decide what tower it thinks has the best signal for use. And once it makes that selection, it continues that, and when a call comes in or goes out, it's going to select that tower to complete that call. But it is constantly scanning the environment. So if you get up and move, you change directions, you leave the courtroom, it will then decide that there's another tower that it thinks better is at that point, so it will make the switches. So it's constantly scanning to make those connections.
And once the phone selects a tower and a connection is made, like a phone call, are reports generated by the phone companies that you can review?
Yes, so once the phone makes a connection to the tower, it generates into call detail records, the timestamp, the tower and sector information that is reflected in the CDRs.
Showing you page 4 of your report, can you explain to the jury what a cell phone tower looks like to the average person?
Sure. The cell tower up in the top left corner is what we would call a monopole. That's probably the most common configuration. I think if you see it out on the interstate, the tall poles with the array of antennas on top of it. Towers can appear, especially in Jacksonville and other urban environments. They're on the sides of buildings, and in some places they're hidden or disguised in everyday items such as a flagpole, or in this case, when city requirements require it to not be so ugly, they camouflage with this tree because they think that's not ugly. So a bunch of different configurations, and those cell phone towers are then split into sectors. There are several configurations. You can have a six-sided tower. You can have an omnidirectional tower, which covers 360 degrees. But by far the most common configuration of all cell towers in the United States is a three-sided tower. So you have a tower that is then divided into 3 equal sectors, and each sector serves a specific area. The phone companies provide us the direction that the center of that sector points to. It's known as an azimuth. So if you have, in this illustration, a 0 azimuth, you're pointing at true north, the direct center of that sector. So now we know if we have a tower, a sector, and the direction that that sector points at, we can then narrow down the location area of a device when it connects to the tower.
Can you say how much of a geographic area each tower will cover?
It varies based off of the areas in which the tower's placed. So in a rural area, it could be a very large area, say 10 miles between towers or even 20 miles between towers in some instances. In a very dense urban area like New York City, you're going to have a tower every block. So it could be a very small area. And in an urban area like Jacksonville, it's going to range somewhere in between there.
You said earlier that the phone is the one selecting the tower. Does it always select the closest tower?
Not always. It's going to select the tower that it sees as having the best signal. That's usually the closest tower, but not always.
Okay. What kind of factors can impact that?
Environmental factors such as obstructions, the place you're in at a very hardened concrete building like a giant courthouse, there might be some things that delay a signal. If I was sitting with a 6-inch thick brick wall behind me and a window in front of me, it might select the tower that's 5 miles in front of me versus the tower that's 2 miles behind me.
Cell phone towers, are they like GPS records where they can put somebody in a particular point?
No, it's a general location. This is not a precise location. We can't say that someone is sitting in this chair in this room. We can say that they're in an area covered by a cell tower and sector.
Okay. And do phone companies maintain GPS records?
They do not historical GPS records.
Showing you page 5 of your report, can you explain how you interpret the call detail records, and we'll show those to the jury in a minute, but how you explain call detail records on a map? So
thinking back to that graphic in the tower before, this is a sector representing 120 degrees facing true north or zero azimuth, and it's illustrated on a map with this wedge. We're able to provide the geographic location of the phone based on the next closest tower. So based on the positioning of the towers, we can provide an estimate on where a phone was located during the time of the event. In this call, you'll see on several maps there will be multiple sectors off one tower. So the shaded area is just there to help you orientate towards which sector is being used and which direction it's pointing. That is not the coverage area of that cell tower.
Okay, so as you just explained, the shaded area is just showing you that we're in this part of the sector, but it could be somewhere out in that area.
That is correct. And it's also, every tower is configured differently. There is no sector 1 is always 0 degrees azimuth. It could be 10 on one tower, it could be 30 on another tower. So it's whatever the engineers determine is the best position for those towers to provide coverage to their customers.
Page 6, can you explain this to the jury?
Sure. So along with the sectors, you're going to have a call-out box on each map, and that call-out box is going to provide some basic information. Up in the green, you'll see that it will provide the unique identification for that tower being used. The sector is that -13 in this case, and then it's going to provide the date, the time, the number of the device being used, the type of event that's happening, the direction, and then the associated number with that call.
Okay. And then in some of the boxes, you may get a number, like a 3, I'm going to make one up, but like a 3-digit number that indicates the azimuth?
Yes, so if there are multiple sectors off one tower, I try to include the azimuth in there so you know which call happened on which sector. So if you see a number in there, we'll see on the map, I'll point them out, but I also included the azimuth so you know which sector is being used.
Where did the records come from that you used to generate these maps?
The records come from the cellular companies.
Is there other information that you need to generate the maps that doesn't come from the cell phone companies?
Yes, so along with the call detail records, which include the tower and sector used, I need a tower records, which include where is that tower geographically located with the GPS coordinates, so where is the tower located, and then what is the azimuth of that sector. So those are provided in tower records, and then I also need to know what times and what locations are relevant to the analysis.
Okay. So just to touch on that second point first, you're an FBI analyst interpreting cell phone records.
Correct.
Are you involved in the actual investigation of the cases in which you're assisting?
No, when I testify as a CAST agent, I am not. So I'm an agent that investigates my own crimes, but I don't, not my crimes that have been committed, no, in this case, I am only here to advise on the cellular records.
Okay. So the dates, the times, the phone numbers that are given to you, you don't know the significance of any of those.
In most cases, no.
And then on to the first thing, the tower list. So are cell phone companies required by law to report to the federal government where their towers are located?
Yes.
And when you're creating a map, so in this case, this homicide happened in 2020, or in 2025, are you using the tower records from 2020 to perform your map?
Yes, I use the tower records that are most closely related to the event that happened.
Going to slide 7, can you explain to the jury what timing advance is?
Sure. Timing advance is an engineering term which refers to the distance or the time that it takes for a signal to travel from the cell phone to the, or, I'm sorry, from the tower to the device and then back to the tower. Based on the time measurement of that event, the network then calculates an estimated distance of where that is. Timing,
Sorry, kind of like how echolocation works for a bat?
similar.
And why does timing advance exist? What is the purpose of it?
So timing advance is necessary in order to make the system work. So I like to point out, it's like if we all got up and ran out that door right now in an emergency situation, we would all crash into each other and fall and fail, right? But if we all got up in an orderly manner, proceeded through the door when we were supposed to, we would get out much more efficiently. So timing advanced is for that same reason. So all these phones and devices are trying to communicate with the same tower. The tower has to know how to order those phones and those devices. So it needs to know an approximate location of where those phones are located so that it can then order the activity that's happening with those phones. So it doesn't care exactly where you're located, it just needs to know an area. So timing advanced is really a measure of a timing advanced band. So the network's saying your phone is located 1 band, 2 bands, 3 bands, 8 bands away from the tower. And then it knows that it needs to back up the things that it needs to do in order for the information to get to your device when it's necessary.
And this is separate than somebody making a phone call where there's an indication in the record.
Correct. Timing advance is a network-initiated event. So these measurements are happening whether you're using your device or not. So as long as your device is on, the network can take timing advance measurements from your device. So it takes it at frequencies. It's set up differently for different market areas and according to what your phone's doing. So if it's taken 10 measurements of your phone in the exact same location, meters for 4G technology.
Okay, so the distance between the sides of the band are 76 meters?
Correct.
Will a phone,
I'm sorry, 78 meters.
Will a phone always be inside of the band?
The majority of the time, the phone will fall within the band. There are instances where that signal can be bounced, which causes even a millisecond of a delay will then increase or add some distance. So the band will look like it's further away because instead of going straight from the phone to that tower, it took a slight variation. It bounced off a window, bounced off some sort of obstruction. So I had to go around. That little fraction of a second could add distance in the calculation. So sometimes the phone will be located within a band or two of the actual distance put in the records.
So in the instance where there's that kind of interference you just described, somebody would be slightly inside by a band.
It could, yes.
And so the difference would be like standing on the front steps of the courthouse versus being inside of a courtroom. There could be some interference by the radio frequency.
Correct. So, I mean, the difference in talking through it mathematically, it would be 78 meters closer or 156 meters closer. 56, yeah.
I want to reference 2020 when you received these records. In 2020, were all of the phone companies providing timing advance records?
No. Back then, only Verizon and Sprint provided timing advance records. Again, these are records that all carriers take. They're not mandated by law to be provided, so the carriers provide them if they maintain records of them.
Okay, so T-Mobile and AT&T did not?
Not at that time, no.
And again, these are not GPS records?
They're not GPS records.
Switch gears for a moment and show you some phone records. One of the phone numbers that was provided to you, 904-485-7529, there was no mappable data for that phone for this time period?
Correct.
And again, you don't know which record is associated to what person?
I do not.
Referencing 904, 704, 1595 as an example, and that states 232. So when you receive and when the jury receives these records, do they include with them what's called a records key?
They do.
And I'm showing you the records key here. Can you explain to the jury what the record key is?
So it's just an explanation of what each column in the record does. So if you're not familiar with it, you can use this key to kind of go, it gives you a little explanation of what each column is providing.
And I don't think the jury has heard this term yet, so I want to highlight, it says UTC. Can you explain to the jury what UTC is?
Yes, so UTC stands for Universal Time Coordinated, but what it references is a set time that all other time zones are then adjusted to. So Universal Time Coordinated would be 0, and then other time zones would then adjust forward or back from that. So in our time zone on the East Coast, it would be -4 hours during daylight savings time, -5 hours during non-daylight savings time or standard time. So it would be UTC -5.
So for January of 2020, it would be -5.
It would be -5 standard time. Eastern Standard Time is -5.
Just as an example, if the record said 5 p.m. UTC, what would the Eastern Standard Time be?
12 p.m.
Noon?
12 noon, yep.
And then continue like that. So if it's 4 p.m., what would the record?
11 a.m.
And say it was 4 a.m.
It would be 11 p.m. the day before. So if the record was the 27th of July at 4 a.m., the actual event would have happened the 26th of July at 11 p.m.
Most of the records that you received are in Universal Time Code or coordinated?
T-Mobile, AT&T, yes, Verizon, and Sprint, they're all different varying things. But nowadays, most are all going towards UTC, but T-Mobile and AT&T were.
And Sprint at that time was using local time.
Sprint at that time was using local time for some call records and central time for other call records.
And the records key would reflect which one that is.
Yeah, in this case, it was local time.
I want to give the jury an example of what you're looking at. I'm referencing what's called Report AU, or the 704-1595 number.
Okay.
So can you explain just briefly what the columns are that you're looking at? And first of all, what is this page reflective of?
This page is the voice records, or the records for voice calls over AT&T's network.
And explain to the jury just briefly what are the different columns and what's important to you for mapping purposes.
Yeah, so item 1 is just a number in the row in the record. So here there's 12 records, so 1 through 12. You have the connection date, which is important, and the connection time in UTC. You have the estimated time of the call, which is 16 seconds on the first one, the number that started the call, and the number that it was calling. And then in this instance, AT&T and T-Mobile, they also provide some information specific to the device being used, and then the type of call it was. So an MT is mobile terminating, MO is mobile outgoing. So that kind of gives you some information on that. You know that it was an incoming call. If it's mobile terminating, it terminated to that line. If it's outgoing, it outgoing from that line. And then the cell location provides the tower, and then the geographic location or the GPS location for that tower, and then the azimuth. But again, we don't use the records. We don't use the tower information in the records organically. We pull the tower list and then match up the records with that tower list.
For an example where it's item 4 and where it says 20:03:06, that's in military time, but it's also uniform or UTC. So that would be 15:03:06. So what's that, 3 p.m.?
3 p.m., yes.
You said that these are the phone call records. Do you get records as it relates to FaceTime or Instagram or Facebook calls?
No, so any kind of mobile streaming service or streaming calls like that would occur as a data session, so it would be reflected in the records as a data session.
And when we're reflecting data sessions necessarily match up exactly with, like, say, for instance, a FaceTime call.
No, it could be its own data session. It likely would be embedded in multiple things that were happening during a data session. So if you have a 60-minute data session, I can't tell you what time you started using your ESPN app, and then what time you made a Facebook call, and then what time you got on the Google and searched for something. So it's all within that same data session.
We said, so FaceTime calls are not going to be reflected in the call logs.
No.
And then what about like iMessages?
iMessages, iPhone to iPhone, which makes it an actual iMessage, it would be a data session also, so it would be reflected in data sessions. If you went iPhone to Google, it would not actually be an iMessage, even though it's coming from an iPhone. It has to be, both people have to be, have iMessage enabled for it to be an actual message. So if both are enabled and it's going back and forth over Apple phones, it's going to be a data session. If it's mixing Apple and Google, then it would likely show up in the records as an SMS.
And just to highlight further, so if a data session exists, it could be that I sent one iMessage, it could be that I sent 500 iMessages, you just can't tell by these records.
That's correct. I don't know what's happening during the data sessions.
So let's look at the data sessions. So I'm showing you the next page of this. Is this what the data sessions look like for the 904, 704, 1595 number?
Yes.
And this set of records we can see comes from AT&T, where there's, in 2020, were there some companies that you could or could not map data sessions?
There were companies that we chose not to map data sessions for. We could map the data sessions, and 95 to 98% of the time they were accurate, but there were some known inconsistencies with AT&T. Again, it's not mandated by law that they have to provide these records, so they do with them what they want. They had some inconsistencies that we weren't comfortable with, so as CAST, we chose not to map AT&T records.
Okay, so even though AT&T records were 95 to 98% reliable, CAST said that's not good enough for you all.
Right, there were certain anomalies that we knew existed, and we did not want to take the chance that we were looking at one of those anomalies and not knowing. They have since fixed that, so we know what kind of records we're looking at and which ones may contain those anomalies, so we do now, but we didn't then.
What about T-Mobile? Could you map data sessions for T-Mobile in 2020?
T-Mobile, yes, under certain circumstances, we look at it as the totality of events, so you look at the actual records themselves, and if it meets criteria, then yes, we will map it.
Okay. Just to give an example of some of the columns. So say, for instance, column or line 25 here. So we have 10:08, but that's UTC, so that's 5:08 a.m., right? And then we have the phone number, and then it tells us there's data going up and that there's data going down, so uploading, downloading things.
Correct.
I want to jump down a little bit to lines 42 and 43. So do you see line 42 there?
Yes.
So this is on January the 15th, 2020. And that's about 7:11 a.m.
7/11/09, it would be exactly 5 hours before.
And we can see there's data sessions going data up and down.
Correct.
All right. And then the next entry at line 43, we have at 18:10:44. So if I subtract 5 hours, that's 13:10, so about 1 p.m., 1:10:44.
Correct.
And we have bytes up and bytes down.
Correct.
Between those two times of 7:11:09 and 1:10:44 on the phone number 904-704-1595, there are no data sessions at all.
Correct.
What is that indicative of to you?
When you're using a phone that's dependent on, a smartphone that's dependent on data connections, the most logical answer is the phone's off.
And this is an iPhone?
Correct.
All right. I want to go back to the PowerPoint now. I'm showing you page 8. Can you explain to the jury what page 8 is?
Sure. This is a geographical representation of what areas were provided to me are locations of interest, and then the actual coverage for T-Mobile, AT&T, and Sprint. T-Mobile's the green, AT&T's the blue, Sprint's the black. This is the actual tower footprint for the Jacksonville area in 2020.
Okay. And just as an example, so here, there's a green dot that's a T-Mobile tower, right?
Yes,
So even if I am like right next to the tower, but I am a Sprint customer, would I interact with that tower?
no,
So I can only interact with the tower that services my phone.
correct. Well, I'll caveat that there are certain rules for roaming. I mean, if you're old enough to remember when you roamed on a network, but nowadays the coverages are so wide that networks don't want you operating on other networks because you have to provide money. So in this environment, no. And if it were roaming on another network, you wouldn't see it reflected in the records.
Going to page 9, you explain to the jury what we see on page 9.
This is the first slide of actual analysis of the device. So this shows the telephone ending in 3684 and 4911 on July 15th, 2020, between 4:42 a.m. and 5:26 a.m.
Okay.
So what it,
No, and I just want to take this as a moment. So you have these colors. So are all of these in that color from the 624, 3684, those are the records that come from that particular phone?
yes,
And then same here with the 702, because we can see, for instance, at 50128 and 50122, I'm drawing all over this. These two phones are interacting with each other, but these are the records coming from their respective phone providers.
correct. So in this instance, the call at 5:01:22 a.m. is an outgoing call from 3684, which is located up near the green icon, and it's going into the phone number or the device using 4911, who's located on the green tower near the blue icon.
So the phone with the 3684 number is up here, and then it is going to move down here by the time of this call at 526.
That's correct.
States 10, or slide 10.
This shows the location for phone ending in 3684 and 0896, both at 8 a.m. Located in this area. So the phone ending in 3684 is represented in orange and is hitting off the orange sector, and the phone ending in 0896 is hitting off of the silver sector.
And in some instances, do you not actually get sector information from the phone companies?
In rare instances, the sector information was not provided in Sprint records, and was not provided in the records.
For the kind of silvery color 305, 321, 096, there's not a sector, but you've got like a circle. Can you explain that to the jury?
Sure. So I know it hit off of that tower, but I can't tell you which sector. So again, it's a broader geographic area where that phone could be located. It could be anywhere off that tower, which covers 360 degrees. So since we don't know the sector, I represent it as 360 because that's all I can tell you is that it was on that tower.
The same general rules from before. You're not saying somebody's inside the shaded area. You're just saying they're interacting with that tower.
Nope. That's just to show you the orientation of the tower.
Page 11. We talked a little bit about it earlier. So here we've got an instance where there are two different sectors being interacted with.
Correct.
And you had explained with my poor example that where you use the three numbers, that represents the azimuth. Can you emphasize that for the jury here?
Yep. So if you go back to the initial illustration, think of it as a compass with 360 degrees. So in this case, the sector here points at 165 degrees on that compass, and the sector here points at 285 degrees.
And so at 8:30 to 9:30, the number 6243684, as well as 478, 491, 2831 are interacting with the towers located in this part of town.
Correct.
Page 12. This is the first time that we see that timing advance. So can you explain again to the jury the timing advance records here?
Again, so we now have the tower, the sector, and an estimated distance from the tower. So instead of having the entire area of that sector, we can narrow down further that it was in a more specific area of that sector.
And this is the first time that we see this 478-305-9583 number, and you have it indicating that it is in the area that services kind of this 7001 Merrill Road address?
Yes, I would say that that tower is the tower that would most likely provide service to that residence.
Now, we've got these bands for the 803-3671 that are kind of opposing and going in opposite directions, but then they seem to meet here. Does that mean anything to you?
Yes, so the fact that those bands occur so closely in time, one's at 10:24:0 and one's at 10:24:24, so only 24 seconds apart, means that the phone or device is likely somewhere on the edge of those two towers. And we're able to narrow down that it's likely in this area as opposed to this area or this area, because logic just tells you that you can't get from here to here in 24 seconds. So you're going to be somewhere very close to where the towers intersect, and you're also going to be somewhere where you can logically get from one point to the other in the amount of time between the events.
Page 13. So the 478-305-9583 has now moved from up here down here,
That's correct.
and then kind of walking through it, the 803 number is also moving kind of generally down,
Yes.
and then you have the 624-3684 is remaining up here the entire time.
That's correct.
And then you've got timing advance bands again. Can you explain those again?
Again, that's going to give you, so in this case, at 11:39 and 11:50, I'm sorry, there's events on these timing advance bands. And at 11:30, there's events on this timing advance band. So instead of saying it's off this tower, this sector, but instead of saying it's somewhere here, we know it's more generally in closer to the timing advance bands.
And you've got in these call-out boxes where these devices are and who the phone calls are between. So this is at 11:39 a.m. The 803-3671 has an incoming call from 624-3684. So that 3684 number is kind of up here. The 3681 is down here, receiving a call. Is that what the map shows?
That's correct.
Page 14, we now have the 866-2370 number introduced. What is the general pattern of that phone?
So it shows you that at 11:40, the device was located over near this area using this tower and started moving in this general direction, ending up on this tower at 11:50.
Slide 15, you've got a lot of things going on. We've got the 624-3684 is calling the 478-2831. So that number is now down here, the 478-2831 number.
That's correct.
And the 624 number is remaining kind of generally up here the entire time.
Correct.
The 866-2370 number is now here in this area.
Correct.
And then the green 803-3671 number is also down here in this area here.
That's correct.
And we've got a timing advance record again for that green phone, because it's only that 803-3671 that you get the timing advance, right?
That's correct.
So while it's hitting off of this tower, that's what the timing advance band is saying, approximately the distance it is away from the tower.
That's correct.
Moving to slide 16. The 624 number, again, still up in this general area.
Yes,
Now the 478 number is back up in this general area.
that's correct.
All right, 1240. The red 478-305-9583 is now up here. It was down here, and so it's moved back up here.
Correct.
Now we're at 2:15 in the afternoon. The 866-2370 number has now moved up to the north side.
At 2:16, yes.
Slide 18. Now we've got a bunch of things going on again. So we've got our 624-3684, our 803-3671, all up here on the north side.
Correct.
We've got our 702-918-4911, and our red 704-1595 number is now back on, and it's also on the north side.
Yes,
And then we've got our 624-3684 also up here on the north side.
that's correct.
All right. Finally, you were asked to map this 904-240-5517 number.
Yes,
At any point during the relevant time periods between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., was it ever in the area of the homicide?
it did not connect to any towers in that area.
If I can have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you, Agent. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Cross-exam for Mr. Whitaker.
Actually, you need to report. I'll leave it up to you.
May it please the court.
Yes.
Good morning, Agent Corley. How are you doing?
Good morning, ma'am. Good.
You used the word approximate location because you can only tell that the device is in the serviceable area of a cell
That is
tower,
correct.
correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And as we see by, I guess we'll start with page 19 of your report, sir. Or actually, yeah, let's go back to page 18. The way you have illustrated this particular map makes it appear that all of these phone calls were together, that the physical devices were close to one another.
They were using the same towers.
And that's what you're trying to reflect, correct, sir?
Well, that's what the records say. I'm not trying to reflect.
How,
It is the tower, yes, ma'am, and a sector.
on this illustration, because all of your color coordination stops at that tower, you might look at that and say, oh, well, these phones must have all been together. But the records can't tell you that, can they?
They cannot.
In fact, they could be up to 2 miles from one another, correct?
I would say that's fair. It could be, yes.
Especially because in this particular part of Jacksonville, and this is kind of on the north side of Jacksonville, sir,
Yes.
this is a little bit more of a rural area, correct?
Towers do appear to be further apart, so the coverage area would be wider.
Okay. And so I just don't want our jurors to have this mistaken belief that this is an illustration showing all of these phones must be together.
This is an illustration showing that all these phones were using the towers that they connected to. They connected to the same towers. But I cannot tell you exactly where they were within the tower coverage area. I can just tell you that they were in that area of the tower.
And again, in Jacksonville, and it's an estimate, but in Jacksonville, it's roughly 1.5 2-mile radius, correct?
I would say that's a fair average.
And when we talk about these vectors, again, that's not absolute either, is it, sir?
The sectors,
Yes.
absolute in which way?
Well,
You mean
you know,
the degrees?
At the end of the day, all of these records and all of these towers, they are actually physically erected and monitored by the cell phone companies, correct?
I don't know about monitored, they're recorded
Okay.
and logged, yes.
The records are maintained.
Yes, ma'am.
And these are for-profit companies, correct?
They are, yes, ma'am.
Their priority is full coverage, correct?
That is correct.
They don't want dropped calls, correct?
They do not.
Okay. And so, as you've explained, cell phones are designed and their technology allows the phone to decide, hey, how can I connect the fastest and best, correct?
The phone identifies the clearest signal. The phone decides the clearest signal from the tower.
Or wherever that particular phone is on in any particular moment, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And because cell phone companies are in the business of not having dropped calls, their towers are going to purposely overlap, correct?
There is a small overlap between sectors on towers, yes.
Okay. And so that's what I mean by it's not an absolute exact because there is overlap between towers, correct?
There is overlap, but on the same logic that you're speaking, the company doesn't want you to have dropped calls. It doesn't want you to have interfered calls. So if there's too much overlap, it has a negative effect on your service. So there is enough overlap so that a call doesn't drop, but they're not overlapping and going over each other because then there would be too much interference with your calls and you wouldn't have a good user experience. So there is a small portion of each tower where it would oversix. I think if you were to put a number, it would be somewhere like 70 to 75% out from a tower is when the towers start overlapping to provide that coverage so that you don't drop calls. And to your point, I think what you're trying to say, I don't want to be confusing. The beams are not exact. RF doesn't stop in straight lines. So if I represent a beam on the map, it's not going to look like a straight line. It's going to look more like, you know, a wiggly something like this, just to be clear. I think that's what you were asking.
Sure. And so you can't say whether a particular phone is 100 feet from the tower or 1 mile from the tower, with the exception of the time in advance.
That is correct.
And there was only one, did you tell us there was one or two of the phone records provided that did provide that time in advance information?
Well, at the time, two carriers provided it, Sprint and Verizon. There were no Verizon phones. So there was only one phone in this analysis that had timing advance.
And which phone was that?
The phone ending in 3671.
Okay. And the full phone number for that is 904-803-3671?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And was that through Sprint?
That was through Sprint. Yes, ma'am.
And during this time period of 2019, 2020, wasn't Sprint being bought out by T-Mobile?
So the merger talks were ongoing, but Sprint and T-Mobile were still separate companies.
And wasn't Sprint suffering kind of from some defect in terms of the information they were providing?
I wouldn't say a defect. There was some records. In this case, we saw one with the sector missing, where a certain piece of information wouldn't be populated. So the information that was populated wasn't wrong, but sometimes data was missing. And this was, in general, as an opinion from CAST, it seemed like Sprint was waiting for this merger to happen, and they weren't focused on 4G. They were hoping they would get bought out before the 4G conversion. They did not, so they kind of scrambled to catch up with 4G, and sometimes their records reflected that. So if it's shown, it's not inaccurate or defective, but there were instances where some data fields weren't populated.
And obviously, your analysis is dependent on the accuracy of these records, correct?
Yes.
And you have to depend on the accuracy of when they're keeping the actual call records, correct?
Yes.
Okay. In addition to, you also spoke about separate, what you referred to as tower records.
Correct.
Tower list,
Yes.
correct? That's also compiled by the network companies, correct?
They are.
Okay. And they publish those periodically because they do change.
Yes, networks change. So if you want to increase your